Hi guys, welcome to SUDEEPVERSE, and this is a new initiative for all my students community who are preparing for the UPSC Prelims, and this is DECODE Prelims PYQ 2025. So basically what we are going to do is, we are going to decode the previous year questions of the UPSC Prelims, and we are not only going to understand the knowledge required to answer the question, but also we are going to learn something that is beyond the books, that is beyond the knowledge, that actually helps you to deduce the answer. So make sure that you watch the series very seriously, because it is going to help you tremendously for your upcoming prelims exam. Okay, now let us do the first question of the day, and that is with reference to investments. Consider the following: bonds, hedge funds, stocks, venture capital. How many of the above are treated as alternative investment funds? Options are only 1, only 2, only 3, and all the 4. So this is the question given in UPSC. Let us try to deduce the answer. Now look, this question is a basic question that is asking you whether you have a proper conceptual clarity in capital markets. Okay, so in your economy you study money markets and capital markets. So do you have that conceptual clarity and depth of capital markets? Do you know what are traditional investment or traditional asset class and what are non-traditional asset class? That is what they are trying to test. So look at this very carefully. So if you understand the concepts, you can get the answer very easily. Now if I go back to the board, look at this. You have capital market. Now understand, what is the difference between money market and capital market? That is the first thing that you should understand. If you take money market, the money market deals with borrowings of less than 1 year, whereas capital market is Whereas capital market is something that deals with the investments or borrowings of more than 1 year. Okay, so that is the major difference between money market and capital market. Okay, we are not going to go into the instruments of money market because the question is talking about alternative investment fund. We are going to focus on the capital market. Now, in the capital market, as I told you, the investments and borrowings that happens for more than 1 year, that is long-term borrowings and long-term investment. That is what is capital market. Now, understand that if you take capital market, I can invest. The capital market can invest in traditional assets and we can invest in non-traditional assets. Okay, so what are traditional assets? Traditional assets are equity, bonds and debentures. So equity, bonds and debentures, these are known as traditional asset class. Non-traditional asset class. Now, how is investment done in non-traditional asset class? Listen to this very carefully. This is where SEBI has brought something called alternative investment fund. Alternative investment fund. Okay. So, understand this alternative. They are using the word alternative because it is an alternative for investment in non-traditional asset classes. Okay. And there are 3 categories here. We have category 1, which is nation building funds, or this is basically nation building asset. Category 2 is private equity asset, and category 3 is basically hedge funds. Category 3 is hedge funds. Hedge funds are not supported. That is why they have kept it in the last category. Okay. So, if you take alternative investment fund, they are categorized on the basis of importance, significance and risk. Okay, category 1 is nation building funds. It is very important for India to grow. So, category 1 is always those funds. For example, you have startup investments. You have startup investments here, and you also have venture capital. So this is what is category 1 funds. Very important. They are part of alternative investment funds. The next is category 2 funds is private equity assets. That is, there will be several private companies that are not listed in the stock exchange. Now, if the private companies are listed in the stock exchange, then automatically you will invest in equity of that particular company. So then you can become a shareholder. So that is traditional asset class. But what if that company is not listed in any stock exchange, but still you want to give those shares to the other members for mobilizing funds, and that members have to invest in those companies that are not listed, then that particular category is category 2. So category 2 is private equity assets. That is basically, it is dealing with non-listed companies. Category 3 is something that no one will support, because hedge funds means they basically want to profit out of price movements. That is short selling of funds. Have you heard of shorting of equity or shorting of shares? That is, whenever the share price rises, they will make sure that they sell all the shares that they have. Whenever the share price drops, they make sure that they buy a lot of shares. So they try to make profit out of this, price movements. That is what is called as hedge funds. Usually people will not support the governments and the regulators will not support hedge funds because it actually increases the volatility of the market. Okay. So overall, this is non-traditional asset class. This is traditional asset class. Okay. The entire capital market is handled by whom? It is handled by SEBI. Okay. Yes, there comes some instruments of money market where SEBI also comes into picture. For example, mutual funds. But we are not discussing about money market. We are only discussing about capital market. So this is some basic understanding that you should have when you have learned economy. Okay. So you should not tell that, sir, I did not know this. This is part of basics. Okay. Now coming back to the question. If you look at this, how simple the question is. Now read the question again and you will understand how simple the question is. Look at this. With reference to investments, consider the following. Okay. With respect to investments, consider the following. You have bonds, stocks, hedge funds, venture capital. How many of the above are treated as alternative investment funds? You just understood what is alternative investment fund. It is for non-traditional asset class. Correct? So if you look at this, which are non-traditional asset classes here? Look at this. These are non-traditional asset class. Stocks and bonds are traditional asset class. So alternative investment fund automatically, these are the two that applies to this. How many of the above are treated as alternative investment funds? The answer is only 2. So basically it is not that difficult a question provided that you have conceptual clarity of the economic concepts. Okay. So make sure in economy you learn the concepts very well because usually in economy they will test you the conceptual understanding rather than pure facts. Okay. Alright. So this is about the first question. Let us move on to the next question. Alright guys, let us go on to the next question. The next question is, which of the following are the sources of income for the Reserve Bank of India? Again, a very basic and conceptual question. If you know the economic concepts very well, you can answer this. Okay. Look at this. You have the first statement as buying and selling government bonds. The second is buying and selling foreign currency. The third is pension fund management. The fourth is lending to private companies. And the fifth is printing and distributing currency notes. Okay. Now, look at this. Always when you have too many statements, search for that statement where you know that it is surely wrong. Now, if you look at this carefully, pension fund management, you can easily understand that this is done by PFRDA. That is the Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority. So this basically cannot come under RBI. If this cannot come under RBI, you can remove the third statement. You know that it is wrong. So this and this goes. Automatically when both this goes, you have 1 and 2 only, or you have 1, 2 and 5 only. Okay. So automatically by eliminating 3, you have also eliminated 4. Okay. So you have also eliminated 4. That is lending to private companies is also wrong. So whenever you know that that particular statement is 100% wrong, go back to this particular options and remove that particular options where you have the statement. That will actually help you to narrow down and focus exactly on what is required. Okay, now see what are left now. You have 1 and 2, you have 1, 2 and 5. So basically by default you know that statement 1 and 2 is correct. You don't even have to go and read it. We know that 1 and 2 is definitely correct. Only thing that we have to focus is on 5. Okay, now look at this. The first, buying and selling of government bonds. Yes, RBI is in charge of it. Next, buying and selling of foreign currency. Yes, RBI is not only in charge of foreign currency reserve, but also it can use that foreign currency in order to maintain the stability of the rupee. Yes, so for that, buying and selling of foreign currency takes place. Now, coming to the last statement, that is printing and distributing of currency notes. Here, there is a term called signorage. There is a term called signorage. What does it mean? It is the profit made from printing the currency. The profit made from printing the currency. Okay, so what does this mean? This means, look at this. Obviously, it is the RBI that is in charge of issuing the currency. The RBI is in charge of issuing the currency. Now, the value at which the RBI will issue a currency will always be greater than the cost of manufacturing that currency. So when the cost is less than value, automatically you are getting higher value here. So this difference, the difference between cost and value, that difference is what is the profit. And this profit is what is known as signorage. And yes, printing and distributing currency notes also is a source of income for the RBI. Okay, so this is also the function of RBI, and hence the answer here is D, 1, 2 and 5. Why is this particular question being asked is because we had in the newspapers on that particular year that RBI is transferred the surplus of its income to the government. So in that particular surplus of income, what are the different sources for that income had been given, and hence they are trying to test you. But it does not mean that you have to read that article in order to answer this. Only if you have the basic knowledge of what RBI does and what exactly are the economic concepts under RBI, you will be able to answer this very easily. Okay, so the answer here is D, 1, 2 and 5. So this is the second question. Alright guys, let us look at the third question. Now understand that this question appears to be difficult, but the answer is actually very easy. Whenever they are asking, this is a new trend that they are asking in UPSC, where they are trying to ask the match the following with 3 rows. You have to match with 3 rows. Usually, traditionally they were asking with 2 rows, but now they are asking with 3 rows. Now, don't think that it is very difficult. Whenever they are asking you 3 rows, apply the principle of consistency. Okay? If there is consistency, that means the answer is mostly correct. If there is no consistency, then the answer is usually wrong. Okay? But to apply this principle of consistency, you should have the wisdom of the subject. If you have the subject wisdom, only then you will be able to apply the principle of consistency. So, how to get that subject wisdom is to revise the subject many number of times. But let us see what I am talking about. Okay, let us first read out the question so that you people will get to know how the question appears to be difficult. Okay, with reference to the Government of India Act, with reference to the Government of India, consider the following information. Okay, so you have organization, you have sum of its function, it works under. Okay, so that is the 3 different rows. Now, you have Directorate of Enforcement. They are telling it enforces Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018. Next, Internal Security Division 1 of Ministry of Home Affairs is the one that is in charge of this particular enforcement directorate. That is, this particular body is working under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So that is what they are trying to tell you. The next, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence enforces the provisions of the Customs Act of 1962. It is under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. Third one, Directorate General of Systems and Data Management, carrying out big data analytics to assist tax officers for better policy and nabbing tax invaders. Okay, Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. Alright, so we have read out all the 3 options or all the 3 statements or all the 3 rows. Now, in how many of the above rows is the information correctly matched? We have only 1, only 2, all the 3 and none. So, they have not given any option for you to eliminate. You have to know either it is wrong or right. Now, people think that because there is no scope of elimination, it is very difficult to answer, but it is not so. Observe the question very, very carefully. Look at this. Enforcement Directorate. We know that this mainly talks about economic offences. It mainly deals with economic offences. This is the basic subject wisdom. If you don't know what is Enforcement Directorate at all, that means that you don't have the subject wisdom. That's what I was trying to tell you. Okay, so Directorate of Enforcement is, you know that it will deal with economic offences. One such economic offence is Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2019. Okay, now does it work under Ministry of Home Affairs or not? We will come back to this. Let us come to this. Directorate of Revenue Intelligence. Look at this, intelligence with respect to revenue collection. Okay, now it enforces the provisions of Customs Act 1962. This is also an economic agency that is trying to enforce an economic act, that is Customs Act 1962, and this comes under Ministry of Finance. Automatically, revenue, customs, everything comes under Ministry of Finance. So there is consistency in this. Okay, now look at this. Directorate General of Systems and Data Management. Okay, systems and data management. Okay, now look at this. Systems and data management, automatically they carry out big data analytics. Why? To assist tax office, to nab tax evaders. Okay, so there is consistency here. Now look at this. Nabbing tax evaders and to assist tax officers is the job of Ministry of Finance. I hope you are understanding this. There is consistency if you see in the statement. But come back to the first statement. If you look at the first statement, Enforcement Directorate, it actually takes care of Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018, and it is also in charge of PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act. But let us forget that. Let us say that economic offences, one such economic offence is Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018. Now, if you look at this, Ministry of Home Affairs is actually in charge of Internal Security of India. Why is Internal Security of India put under Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018? It doesn't make any sense. So, this is where the consistency breaks. There is no consistency in this. You can see consistency in this. Since there is no consistency in this particular match the following is wrong. The only correct thing is 2 and 3, and hence the answer here is B, only 2. And this exactly is what is called principle of consistency. But that principle of consistency will come only with subject wisdom, and subject wisdom will come only with revisions. So I hope you understood this. One thing that is always an important takeaway from this discussion is whenever the question appears to be difficult, make sure that you apply your presence of mind and your logic, and you will definitely get the answer, because the answer will definitely be easy. Okay, so this is about the third question. Let us move on to the next question. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question that is also based on your basics. If you know economy basic concepts, you will be able to answer this. Look at this. Consider the following statements. The Reserve Bank of India mandates all the listed companies in India to submit a business responsibility and sustainability report. Look at the name carefully. Business responsibility and sustainability report. In India, a company submitting a business responsibility and sustainability report makes disclosures in the report that are largely non-financial in nature. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? Okay, again, now don't learn tricks. That is, just because you have used the word all, it doesn't mean that the statement is wrong. Don't learn like that. But look at the statement properly. RBI mandates all the listed companies. Listed companies means those companies that are listed in the stock exchange. So, if the companies are listed in the stock exchange, why is the RBI coming into picture here? It should always be the regulatory body that is taking care of the companies listed in the stock exchange is the SEBI. SEBI is the regulatory body in charge of all the listed companies. Then why are they telling RBI? It just means that they have removed SEBI and they have added this term called RBI, and hence this statement is wrong. Okay. So any person who knows what is the core function of SEBI, what is the core function of RBI will be able to get this. But what happens the moment we are seeing business responsibility and sustainability report, our mind starts getting fixated on this BRSR. We forget that it is purely asking on this listed companies, everyone will know, and that is in charge is SEBI and not RBI, everyone will know, but your mind starts getting fixated on this, and that is why you will get confused. That is why you should always stay calm when you are reading the question, because the clues are always there in the statement itself. Okay, so the first statement is wrong. Coming to the second statement, in India, a company submitting a BRSR makes disclosure in the report that are largely non-financial in nature. Okay, now look at this. The name is Business Responsibility Sustainability Report. When the name is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, obviously it will make disclosures that is non-financial in nature. Okay, now many people will think, sir, largely, I got confused in largely. Largely is a very subjective criteria. Largely for me may not be largely for you. Largely for you may not be largely for some third person. So when it is a subjective criteria, then it really doesn't matter whether it is actually correct or wrong. Okay, it will usually be correct only. Largely is a subjective criteria. That is, if instead of largely, if I say mainly, even then it becomes correct. Okay, if I tell only, then you have to think a little bit. Okay, but largely, mainly, influencing, bearing upon, all these things are very subjective in nature, and they have very, very less value in that particular statement. So don't give too much of attention to it. But if you look at Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report, the name of the report itself is telling that you have to tell something that is apart from the financial nature or the financial part of the business. Okay, so the second statement can more or less, with your presence of mind and common sense, say that the second statement is correct. So the answer here is 2 only. Look at this. Now this takes your subject wisdom to get to that answer. It really does not need for you to know what exactly is Business Sustainability Report, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. What many people think is, oh, I have not read the report, I will not be able to get the answer. You should not have that attitude. You should approach this question with pure neutrality, and if you can use your subject wisdom, irrespective of your studied Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report or not, you will be able to get the answer that is 2 only. So I hope you are getting the flow of how we have to always approach the questions in UPSC Prelims exam. Alright guys, let us go to the next question. That is the 5th question. Now here they are trying to test your depth of understanding in Income Tax Act. Okay, now I do consider that this is relatively a difficult question because it can be a little tricky to understand the agriculture and its allied activities and how they are defined in the Income Tax Act. But overall, let us see how we can try to get the answer, but it requires your some knowledge of the Income Tax Act. Anyways, let us first read out the question. The question is, consider the following statements. They are given 2 statements, statement 1 and statement 2. Statement 1 says, in India, income from allied agricultural activities like poultry farming and wool rearing in rural areas is exempted from any tax. Okay. Statement 2 reads, in India, rural agricultural land is not considered a capital asset under the provisions of the Income Tax Act 1961. The question mainly is less about agriculture and is more about whether you know about Income Tax Act 1961. which of the following statement is correct with respect to the above statements? Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, but statement 2 does not explain statement 1. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is not correct. Statement 1 is not correct, but statement 2 is correct. Okay. Now look at this. By just looking at this, this is talking about allied sector. Okay, this is talking about allied sector, and this statement is talking about agricultural land. So, is there principle of consistency here? One is talking about allied sector and its income, another is talking about the rural agricultural land. Okay, so though it is mainly on the broader aspects of agriculture, inside there is no consistency. They are talking about two different things. So, this statement can never be correct. I hope you are understanding this. And whenever there is principle of inconsistency, that is, consistency is not there between the two statements, one of the statement is usually wrong. Two statements that are correct but still inconsistent is very rare. Keep this in your mind. Okay. So whenever there are two statements and it is inconsistent, so there are very high chances that one statement is wrong, one statement is correct. Or there can be chances that both the statements are wrong. But there is very less chances that there is inconsistency between the two statements and still both the statements are correct. Okay. So usually this will also not be correct. But anyways, let us go and analyze this. As I told you, this question is a little difficult because you need to have an understanding of Income Tax Act 1961. Okay. But anyways, if I take this statement, now look at this. In the Income Tax Act 1961, they say that the income we get from cultivation on the agricultural land. Cultivation on the agricultural land. Now, this particular income is exempt. This particular income is exempt from any type of tax. It is exempt from any type of tax. That is income tax, any type of income tax. Okay. So, this particular statement is wrong because, look at this, the income that comes from cultivation of on agricultural land. But this Income Tax Act does not exempt allied sector. It does not exempt allied sector. Okay. So, the first statement is wrong because in the Income Tax Act, the agricultural activity performed on the agricultural land in terms of cultivation, only that is exempt from income tax. Okay. The next, or any type of tax. The next is, in India, rural agricultural land is not considered a capital asset under the provisions of Income Tax Act. Now, we know that the first statement is wrong. The second statement, if you look at it carefully, let us say if a farmer will sell his particular land to someone else, does he have to pay capital gains on that particular land? If you think on those lines, you'll be able to understand that the farmer need not pay any capital gains tax on that particular land that is sold. And why is that? Is because of this. That is, the rural agricultural land is not considered a capital asset. If it was considered a capital asset, then that person had to pay the capital gains tax. Because it has to help the farmer, what this particular Income Tax Act has done is, they have removed that particular rural agricultural land as part of the capital asset and hence created an exception for the capital gains tax for those farmers who are selling their agricultural land to someone else. Okay. So, statement 2 is correct, statement 1 is wrong. So, which is it? Statement 1 is not correct, but statement 2 is correct. So, overall, the D is the correct answer. Okay. Though the question seems to be a little difficult, you should have some conceptual clarity of Income Tax Act to answer this. Okay. Now, here many people will give you tricks to answer. I would not support the tricks. I would just want you to learn what exactly is Income Tax Act and how is it related to agriculture from this particular question. Okay. So, this is about the fifth question. Alright guys, let us do this question. Now, this question is about Mineral Security Partnership. Because Mineral Security Partnership was in current affairs, they have given this question. Now, understand, the moment a person reads this question, if you think that I have not read Mineral Security Partnership, I have not read current affairs and hence I cannot answer this, then you are trapped. Don't try to think negatively. Whenever you come across a concept or a question that you may have not read, don't have any type of negative bias towards it. Just go with neutral mindset. Now look at this. This is done by design by UPSC. Look at this question very carefully. Consider the following statements. India has joined the Mineral Security Partnership as a member. Okay. Let us keep this. I don't know. I have not studied Mineral Security Partnership. So I don't know whether India is a member or not. Let us keep it like that. Now, the second statement. India is a resource-rich country in all the 30 critical minerals that it has identified. Okay. India is a resource-rich country in all the 30 critical minerals that it has identified. Don't you think that this is a little extreme? If India was so resource rich country in all the 30 critical minerals, why is India so dependent on China? Why has India not attained self-sufficiency? Why is India still suffering, or it is still fighting to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat? These are some things that you should learn. Okay. Now, let us skip it like that. Go to the third statement. The Parliament in 2023 has amended the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957, empowering the central government to exclusively auction mining lease and composite license for certain critical minerals. Which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3 only. Now, the moment they give like this, you have the scope to eliminate by knowing which is exactly wrong. Okay. Now, if you see these three statements, we know that this second statement, India is a resource rich country in all the 30 critical minerals that it has identified. Don't you think that it is a little extreme? Don't you think that UPSC is giving this by design for you to understand that by using this I can get the answer? So if you know that this is wrong, come to this. The second statement is there in all the three. So this becomes wrong, this becomes wrong, this becomes wrong. The correct answer is C. See, even though I don't know what is Mineral Security Partnership, even though I don't know what is the amendment that was done in 2023 regarding the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act 1957, I can get the answer. But what happens the moment you're reading the first statement? India has joined the Mineral Security Partnership as a member. The moment you read this statement, your mind thought, oh, I don't know, I have not read current affairs, this is a difficult question, and then you jump to the next question thinking that, I'm really sorry, let me come back to this, and you jump to the next question, thinking that I'll come back to this question. You have lost an opportunity here. That is why, by just reading one statement, don't jump to the next question thinking that I'll come back. Don't do that. Read the entire question, and if you don't have the scope to use your common sense, or if you think that you need more time to think about this particular question, then you can come back later. But read the entire question once and see if you can eliminate and get the answer. If you are able to eliminate and get the answer, you can mark it then and there itself. Don't wait for coming back. Because this is one such example where UPSC is giving this by design. UPSC knows that by eliminating 2, I can get the answer. It is testing you. Are you able to use your calm mind, your presence of mind to actually apply the logic and get the answer? That is what UPSC is trying to test here. I hope you understood this. Okay. So I hope that you understood this. Now, look at this. The takeaway from this is, one, obviously you could get the answer very easily by knowing that this particular statement is wrong. But for the next year, that is when you are preparing for the next UPSC prelims, you should understand what are these critical minerals, what are the 30 critical minerals that India has identified. That is one. The second is learn about this act. This act is very, very important for prelims. Okay. So have a brief idea about what this Mines and Minerals Regulation and Development Act 1957 is and what are these 30 critical minerals. So just know that. Okay. So this is something that you should do some reverse engineering for the next year. Okay. So this is about the 6th question. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question. Now this is a type of question that has been asked in 2025 onwards, and you can see that they are asking 3 statement questions. Now these questions are not as difficult as the other coaching institutions is making it seem to be. It is not that difficult. That is what, just apply the principle of consistency with your subject wisdom, you will be able to get the answer very well. Now this question that they have asked is particularly on your conceptual understanding of the basics of economy. Okay. When the liquidity management happens, the liquidity management should always happen in an order. Okay. So when the returns on the investment is given, it should always be given in an order. They cannot give it randomly to any person they favor towards. Okay. So for example, if I have to distribute my dividends or distribute my profits, it should always follow an order. Okay. What is that order? That is what they are trying to test. First, let us read out the question and then I will explain the concept. Look at this. Consider the following statements. We have statement 1, statement 2 and statement 3. Look at this, they are asking 3 statements. In the previous questions you saw that there were 2 statements and they were asking whether statement 2 is explaining statement 1, but here they are asking 3 statements. But before you go here and get confused, try to understand the principle of consistency in these 3 statements first and then go here. Don't get confused here. Your entire clarity should be built in this part of the question and not here. Okay. So let us read out the question entirely and then come back to this. Consider the following statements. Statement 1. As regards returns from an investment in a company, generally bondholders are considered to be relatively at a lower risk than stockholders. Okay. Stockholders means shareholders. Okay. The next statement 2. Bondholders are lenders to the company, whereas stockholders are its owners. Okay. Next statement 3. For repayment purposes, bondholders are prioritized over stockholders by a company. Okay. Now, which of the following is correct in respect to the above statements? Both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct and both of them explain statement 1. both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct and statement 1 explains statement 2. Only one of the statements 2 and 3 is correct and that explains statement 1. Neither statement 2 nor statement 3 is correct. Okay. So here they are not even talking about statement 1, they are telling neither statement 2 nor statement 3 is correct. Anyways, coming back to this, look at this. Returns from an investment in a company, generally bondholders are considered to be relatively at lower risk than stockholders. Okay. Bondholders, then comes stockholders. Why? Because bondholders are creditors, whereas shareholders are owners. Okay. Now, creditors and owners, who will be taking more risk? The owners will always be taking more risk. Why? Because the creditors will always be returned their debt before the owners are given the profit. That is why creditors will have relatively lower risk compared to the owners. Now look at this. This statement is explaining this itself. For repayment purposes, bondholders are prioritized over stockholders by the company. Yes, whenever you want to repay before stockholders, stockholders are like owners. Why should they be repaid before the creditors? Creditors have given you debt. So first the company has to return the debt before giving the profits or dividends to the shareholders. So that is why if you look at this statement is supporting this statement. There is consistency. Now, bondholders are lenders to the company, whereas stockholders are owners. Again, this is explaining this only. Now, at the end of the day, I just drew this. Bondholders and shareholders, I have just drawn this. This, whatever I have drawn, the other two statements are also conforming to this diagram only. So, can I say that these three are consistent? So, because of the principle of consistency, we can say that both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct and both of them explain statement 1. So, answer is A. Now, look at this. The moment you decided that all the three are consistent, then you are going into this. Otherwise, if you start going here and then trying to mix and match here, it will become a very, very big headache. So, don't go to this particular chaos. First, get clarity of the statements properly. Once you get clarity of the statements, then go here and get the right answer very, very easily. So, that is how you should do it. Okay. Overall, to just give you the conceptual backing, whenever there has to be any type of liquidity, whenever there has to be any type of repayment, okay, the liquidity or repayment should always be done in this particular order. This is called waterfall structure. This is what is called waterfall payment structure. You should always follow this waterfall payment structure. You cannot go beyond this waterfall payment structure. So, any company will always follow waterfall payment structure. When it comes to liquidity or repayment, it has to be first. The first should always go to secured creditors. First should always go to secured creditors. The second should always go to unsecured creditors. Second should always go to unsecured creditors. The third should always go to preference shareholders. That is, shareholders who are given the preference that they will be given first before the other shareholders. And the fourth should always be given to equity shareholders. These are normal shareholders. Okay. So, overall, if any company has to repay or if any company has to give any type of liquidity, it has to always follow this order. And this order that the company follows is what is called as waterfall payment structure. So, basically here, the entire question is testing your knowledge upon what is shareholders, what is bondholders, what is the risk that they carry. That is all they are asking. Again, it is purely on the basis of your basics of the subject called economy. Alright guys, now let us go to the next question. Again, this question is a trick played by UPSC. Look at this carefully. The moment you are reading the question, let us say, consider the following statements. India accounts for a very large portion of all equity option and contracts traded globally, thus exhibiting a great boom. Okay. Now, let us say you read that statement. Your mind was fixated only on this equity option and contracts. What you would start thinking is, my economy is weak. I don't know capital markets. On top of that, they are asking something about equity options and contracts. I have no idea about this. Let me skip this and go to the next question. You are doing a very, very wrong thing in the exam, because this, though it appears like it is asking some very, very different concept in the capital market, it is actually a very easy question to get the answer. That is why the moment you are seeing something that you may have not read, please don't come to the conclusion that you cannot get the answer. Read the question calmly, because there will always be clues that can help you to get the answer. Look at this. 1. India accounts for a very large portion of all equity option and contracts traded globally, thus exhibiting a great boom. Okay. Though the statement is very extreme, let us keep it. We will not take any type of call now. Let us go to the next question. India's stock market has grown rapidly in the recent past, even overtaking Hong Kong's at some point in time. Now, because they told at some point in time, let us again keep it, in the backup, because we still don't know whether though it is appearing as extreme, we still don't know. Let us understand that. Go to the third statement. There is no regulatory body either to warn the small investors about the risks of the option trading or to act on unregulated financial advisors in this regard. Don't you think India, with its such important economic growth and being the third largest economy in the entire world, don't you think that it will not have any regulator that will warn the small investors about the options, about the risks of option trading, and or unregistered financial advisors? Don't you think that there will be someone to advise against them, or to at least tell the investors to be careful about them? Look at this. This statement is the giveaway. This statement is telling how they are completely dumbed down this statement. This statement is completely dumbed down. It is dumbed down for you to understand that just by knowing this, third statement is wrong. Come to this, look at this. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So all the three goes. So the right answer is A. Now, in the exam, you should have that calm sense of your composure to come to this third statement. You read the first statement, you are already confused. You read the second statement, they are telling some and Hong Kong, so you are again getting confused. So by the time you come to the third statement, your mind already tells you that you don't know. So you are already ready in your mind to move to the next question with the assumption that you don't know this. But any common person, any person with proper common sense will know that this statement cannot be correct at all in a country like India. Not only in a country like India, in any country, there will always be a regulatory body. Forget India. Any country will always have one regulatory body that will do this. You cannot say that there is no at all. So this statement is too extreme and it is purposely dumbed down in order to make you understand that using this, you can get the answer. But trying to think like this in the exam is what is the challenge. The person who is able to manage the time, who is able to maintain the composure and then do it, is the person who will win this game, and not the person who is there in a rush. The person who is there in a rush will read the first statement and come to the conclusion that they don't know. That is why in the prelims exam, you should never be in a rush. You should always have the time. You should always be on par with the time and manage the time effectively, because such questions you can easily answer if you have the time with you. Okay. So this is about the 8th question. The answer is A, 1 and 2 only. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question. First, let me read out the question. Consider the following statements. You have 3 statements. Statement 1 is circular economy reduces the emissions of greenhouse gases. Second statement, circular economy reduces the use of raw materials as inputs. Third statement, circular economy reduces wastage in the production process. Okay. Now look at this. Which one of the following is correct with respect to the above statements? Both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct, and both of them explain statement 1. Both statement 2 and statement 3 are correct, but only one explains statement 1. Only one of the statements 2 and 3 is correct, and that explains statement 1. Neither statement 2 nor statement 3 is correct. Okay. Now look at this. What is circular economy? Whenever you say circular economy means reduce, reuse and recycle. This is what is the circular economy. Okay. So always statement 2 is kept as a reference point. So that is why I have written this circular economy. This is circular economy. Circular economy reduces the emissions of greenhouse gases. Statement 1 is correct. Obviously, when you reduce, reuse and recycle, it automatically reduces the emissions of greenhouse gases. Now, circular economy reduces the use of raw material. Look at this, reduces. It is there here. Instead of 3, I am telling 1. Okay. Next, circular economy reduces wastage in the production process. Look at this, reduces. So, if you look at statement 2 and statement 3, statement 2 and statement 3 are one consistent, and they are consistent with this statement. If they are consistent with this statement, automatically they should be consistent with this. So, with that principle of consistency, I can say that this is correct. Again, I am telling you, if you first make sense of this part of the question, this becomes very easy. Okay. Don't try to mismatch here and then go back to this. You will be in a trap. Okay. You will be in a trouble. Okay. So, please make sure that you work out here itself, apply the consistency principle, you will be able to get the answer. Okay. Whenever they are asking 3 statements, it is very, very difficult for them to make this and this. Very difficult to make this and this. It is easy to make this and this. For an examiner to make this and this, it is relatively very difficult. I am not teaching you trick. I am just telling you. Okay. So, more or less you will have this, but that is not a trick that I want you to learn. I want you to always work out the principle of consistency here and then come to this part. So the answer here is A. Alright guys, let us look at this question. Again, this question requires you to have a good conceptual clarity in economy as a basic subject. Okay, look at this. Let me read out first. Consider the following statements. Capital receipts create a liability or cause a reduction in the assets of the government. Okay. Next, borrowings and disinvestment are capital receipts. Next, interest received. Okay, interest received on loans creates a liability of the government. Okay, look at this. When you read this, you know that the third statement, forget all the basics. Interest received is nothing but income. If I am given a loan, I am getting interest from that loan, I am getting an income from that particular loan. Then if I am receiving the income, how is it a liability? I hope you are understanding this. With that common sense, if you know that this statement is wrong, look at this, I'll eliminate this, I'll eliminate this, I'll eliminate this, the answer is this. Okay, but let us not do that. Let us try to understand what the question is talking about, because the question is conceptual. Let us understand the concepts a little bit. Okay, so if you have to look at this capital receipts, let me write it here. So let us start with receipts. You have revenue receipts, and then you have capital receipts. Capital receipts. Then you have expenditure. In expenditure, you have revenue expenditure, and then you have capital expenditure. Okay. Now, we are not interested in revenue receipts or revenue expenditure. We are interested in capital receipts and capital expenditure because the question is mainly talking about capital receipts. So, it is necessary for you to understand the assets and liabilities and their changes in capital receipts and capital expenditure. Now, understand receipts basically are the income side. That is, whenever I say income side, it is incoming. Okay, it is incoming or income side. And expenditure means it is outgoing or spending side. It's outgoing or spending. Okay. Now see, how can I spend when it comes to capital expenditure? How is the spending happening? It can be like this. One, I can spend by giving a loan. I can spend by giving a loan, or I can spend by repaying the loan. Repaying the loan, or I can spend by paying for an infrastructure. Paying for an infrastructure. Okay. So these are the three ways how I can actually take up capital expenditure. Now, capital receipts means incoming. Okay. How can I get the income from in the form of capital? Okay. One, I can take a loan. This take a loan is what is called borrowing. The next is I can recover a loan. That is, I have given a loan previously and now I am getting it back. The next is I can disinvest in the PSUs. If I disinvest in the the PSUs, that is, if I am going to privatize it, so that particular ownership, I am going to get the money for disinvesting. Okay. So this is how capital receipts and capital expenditure work. Now, let us apply assets and liabilities. First, let us come to capital expenditure. Okay. Giving a loan. Because I am giving a loan, I am going to get interest from it. Asset increases. Repaying the loan. The moment I repay the loan, okay, now that loan I had taken was a liability because I had to pay interest on that. Now, when I am repaying the loan, the liability reduces. Liability reduces. Next, paying for an infrastructure. When I pay for the infrastructure, that infrastructure will create more jobs. It will help the economy. So, paying for the infrastructure means asset increases. So, look at this. Capital expenditure will always result in asset increasing, liability decreasing. Look at this. This is what is capital expenditure. Asset will increase, liability will decrease. But look at the capital receipts. Now let us see. Take a loan. When I take a loan, that is when I borrow, I have to service that loan. So I have to keep giving interest. So liability increases. Okay. Now recover a loan. That is, I had given a loan. Now I am getting that loan back. When I had given the loan, I was getting interest from that. So whenever I had given a loan, it was an asset. But now, because I am recovering that loan, asset is no more there. So here, asset reduces because whatever interest that I was getting, I am no more getting that interest. Okay. Next, disinvestment. Whenever I say disinvestment, that is from that particular company, I am disinvesting some shares. That means I am taking back some shares. So obviously the asset reduces. Because my share decreases, the asset reduces. So understand this, in capital receipts, the asset will always decrease and the liability will always increase. So overall you understood capital receipts, what is happening with respect to assets and liabilities, capital expenditure, what is happening to assets and liabilities. Okay, they have asked about capital receipts. This is what they are asking. Capital receipts, the asset will reduce, the liability will increase. Now let us go and apply that here. If you apply this here, look at this, capital receipts create a liability, okay, or reduce the assets of the government. I hope you are understanding this. So if you come here, look at this, capital receipts reduce the asset or create liability. That is what they are telling. It will create liability or reduce the asset. Okay. If you go back here, capital receipts create a liability or cause a reduction in the assets of the government. So statement 1 is correct. Sorry. So statement 1 is correct. The next, statement 2, borrowings and disinvestment are capital receipts. Borrowings and disinvestment are capital receipts. Look at this, borrowings and disinvestment are capital receipts. So the entire question stands on how well do you know the concept of revenue receipts, capital receipts, revenue expenditure, capital expenditure. Again, this is basics of economy. I hope you understood this. So the answer here is A, 1 and 2 only. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question. It is pretty straightforward and a simple question. Let me read it out first. Consider the following statements about Ram Mohan Roy. Okay, he possessed great love and respect for the traditional philosophy system of the East. He desired his countrymen to accept the rational and scientific approach and the principle of human dignity and social equality of all men and women. Which of the following statements given above is or are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 or 2. Okay. Now, the moment they say Ram Mohan Roy, you should not panic. Okay. Look at the two statements. These two statements are what we call as generic statements. Okay. Both the statements are what we call as generic statements. If you look at it, he possessed great love and respect for the traditional philosophical system of the East. If I remove East and tell West, he may have. How can you tell? There is no evidence of East or West. Whatever they say, that statement is very generic for it to be true. Next, he desired his countrymen to accept the rational and scientific approach and the principle of human dignity and social equality of all men and women. There is no mention of any nouns that is specific to Ram Mohan Roy. You take any thinkers or any reformers. If you take any thinkers or any reformers, these two statements will hold correct. So, by that nature of common sense, we can say that both the statements are correct. Now, this way of thinking will come if you can maintain your composure and if you can solve in a very calm and peaceful manner. If a lot of things are happening in your mind and you are already complicating simple things, you will complicate this also. Okay? You will start thinking system of the East or West. You will start thinking on those lines. So, make sure that you are calm enough and think that these are two generic statements that can be right, not only to Ram Mohan Roy, but to most of the thinkers and reformers. Okay. However, in modern India, socio-religious reforms is a very, very important chapter. So make sure that you learn on the socio-religious reforms. Many reformers or many important thinkers come here. So make sure that you know them. For example, Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So these are very, very important thinkers that you should have some idea about. This year they have given very generic statement. Next year they can give you the different journals or the different institutions that they have set up or the different philosophy that they are proponents of. So when the question becomes very specific, the answers will become a little difficult. So have some idea about the socio-religious reform movements. This year, the entire modern India questions are relatively easy compared to the previous years, but that is what UPSC is all about. Some years, some subjects will be easy. Some years, the same subjects will become difficult. That is why you should never compromise on any subject. You should make sure that you are good in all the subjects. Okay. So the answer here is, for the 11th one, the answer here is C, both 1 and 2. All right. Okay. Let us now look at the next question. The next question is, consider the following subjects with respect to non-cooperation program. The first statement is boycott of law courts and foreign clothes, observance of strict non-violence, retention of titles and honors without using them in public, establishment of panchayats for settling disputes. Now, remember non-cooperation movement. non-cooperation is you're not going to cooperate with the norms of the government. Okay, now look at this. Boycott of law courts and foreign clothes. It is inconsistent with this particular philosophy. Observance of strict non-violence. Yes, Gandhiji was leading the movement, and one of the important conditions that Gandhiji had put was observance of strict non-violence. Correct? There cannot be some violence. There should be strict non-violence. So again, it is making sense. Establishment of panchayats for settling disputes. This is important because when you boycott law courts, British law courts, automatically you need someone to settle disputes. So this is also consistent. Now look at this. This retention of titles and honors without using them in public. Don't you think that it is kind of not making any sense? This is again a test of your common sense. It is not test of your knowledge. It is purely a test of your common sense. Why will they tell you to retain the titles and honors without using them in public? How does that serve the purpose? Or how does it make sense with non-cooperation movement? Okay, so this entire thing is not following the philosophy of non-cooperation movement, and the third statement is wrong. Okay, so only by pure observing and common sense, you can say that 3 statements are correct, only 3 are correct. Okay, again, a easy question. If you know non-cooperation movement, you can easily answer this. Alright guys, the next question is, the irrigation device called Araghatta was, okay, a water bag made of leather pulled over a pulley, a large wheel with earthen pots tied to the outer ends of its spokes, a larger earthen pot driven by bullocks, a large water bucket pulled by rope directly by hand. Understand that all the 4 are different types of irrigation that is practiced in India, but amongst the 4, what exactly is Araghatta is what they are asking. Araghatta is nothing but a Persian wheel. Okay, and the answer here is the large wheel with earthen pots tied to the outer ends of its spokes. Okay, now why am I talking about this is obviously this is a question that has been asked in previous years of UPSC also. They are repeating it again. That doesn't mean that you go back and start researching the previous years in detail. There is no point of doing that. Now see, this particular question tells that you need to read your NCRTs. This is a direct question taken from NCRT, and in the NCRT they have given that particular diagram of that Araghatta also. They have given a big diagram of this large wheel with earthen pots tied to the outer ends of the spokes. Okay, like this, there are many other irrigation systems that was followed in ancient and medieval India that you should have some brief idea when you're studying ancient and medieval India. Not because you have just asked this. When you're studying ancient and medieval India, just have a look on that. For example, you have Rahat, then you have Dekli, then you have Moat. This is the leather bag irrigation type. Okay, this is somewhere here. Okay, look at this one. This is what is Moat irrigation type. Okay, so these are all different types of irrigation that was practiced in ancient or medieval India. However, the question is pretty direct. There is nothing much to say. Araghatta means a large wheel with earthen pots tied to the outer ends of its spokes. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question. Which among the following rulers in the ancient India had assumed the title Matta Vilasa, Vichitra Chitta and Gunabhadra? Okay, we have Mahendra Varman 1, Simha Vishnu, Narasimha Varman 1, Simha Varman. Okay, now this is considered a very easy question. The answer for this is Mahendra Varman 1. Okay, but the takeaway, what is the takeaway is, when you go to any dynasty, you have to have some information about the important kings of the dynasty. You have to have some important information about the important kings. For example, here Mahendra Varman 1 is from Pallavas, and when you have read Pallavas, you should have some idea about Mahendra Varman. You should have some idea about Rajasimha Varman. You should have some idea about Narasimha Varman. So these are the 3 important rulers, and their contributions especially to temple architecture has been great. So you should have some idea about them. So like that, if you take any dynasty, their important kings are very important. That is one. Next, look at this. Mahendra Varman had done very peculiar contributions. One is, if you take Vichitra Chitta. Vichitra Chitta means curious mind. Okay. Why is he called curious mind is because you can see his curiosity especially in architecture. For example, he has constructed a temple. In the temple there is 3 murtis, and all the 3 murtis can be found in the temple. That is Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. All the 3 can be found. That is what is the curious mind. Now if you take Matta Vilasa, why is he called Matta Vilasa is because there is something called Matta Vilasa Prahasana. Okay, Matta Vilasa Prahasana is a very important satire work in Sanskrit. Very few satire works in Sanskrit. that talks about religious hypocrisy. It talks about religious hypocrisy. Okay, so basically here Buddhism, Jainism, Kapilika sect, Shaivite sect, all these sects are taken, and there is a satirical work that is done, and that is what is Matti Vilasa Prahasana. So overall these works, Metta Vilasa, Vichitra Chitta, Gunabhadra means he has very good Gunagalu. Gunagalu means very good virtues. Okay, anyways, so whenever you take one particular king or important kings, not all the kings, important kings of a particular dynasty, have some idea about their literarian works, their architectural works, their titles, and whenever you read about literarian works, just have 2 lines of clarity of what that literary work is talking about. Okay, for example, if you talk about Silapadikaram, you should have 2 lines of what is the Silapadikaram talking about. If you take Raghuvamsha Charitam, you should tell what is in 2 lines, what exactly is this work or novel of Raghuvamsha talking about of Kalidasa. So any literary work you take, try to take at least 2 lines and understand what exactly that literary work is talking about. Okay, so overall, in this particular question, the answer is Mahendravarman 1. And I hope you also understood how to go about studying in ancient India. Okay, so answer for this question is Mahendravarman 1. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question, and that is, Fa Ain, the Chinese pilgrim traveled to India during the reign of. Again, very simple, straightforward question. Anyone can answer this. The answer is Chandragupta 2. Okay. Now, if you have read ancient India, you have seen the foreign travelers. You have always seen the foreign travelers. They arrive in different waves. For example, first will always come Greek travelers, Megasthenes, remember? Then comes, you have the Chinese travelers. Then comes your Arab travelers. And then comes your European travelers. Domingo Pias, Nicola di Conti, okay, European travelers. Okay, so overall, this is how in different waves they come. So Chinese travelers, they mainly come during the Gupta period as well as the Arsha period. Arsha period. Okay, these are the 2 periods where Chinese travelers mainly come. 3 important Chinese travelers that you should know is Fa Ain, the second is Yun Sang, and the third is I Sing. I Sing. These are the 3 important Chinese travelers. Fa Ain comes during the period of Chandragupta II, whereas Yun Sang and I Sing come during the period of Arsha. During the period of Arsha. And Yun Sang is very prominent and important because he also visits the kingdom of Pallavas, and he visits the kingdom of Pallavas during the time of Narasimha Varma. He visits during the time of Narasimha Varma, and he has written several works, and his important work is Siyuki. Okay, and he also takes part in Kanauj assembly. He takes part in Kanauj assembly and has provided important works relating to the time of Arsha. Okay, so overall, this is about the Chinese travelers. Overall, the question is asking about Fa Ain, and the answer is Chandragupta II. But overall, this is how the conceptual clarity of ancient India should be. You should always have the different sequence of events that has happened in ancient India temporally. When I say temporally, it means you should have a very good idea with respect to time. Okay, so overall, this is the answer to this question. Alright guys, let us look at this next question. Again, this question is very easy and very simple, provided you have the temporal sense. Look at this. Who among the following led a successful military campaign against the kingdom of Sri Vijaya, the powerful maritime state which ruled the Malay Peninsula, Sumatra, Java and the neighboring islands? You have Amogha Varsha of Rashtrakutas, Prataparudra of Kakatiya, Rajendra I of Cholas, Vishnuvardhana of Hoysalas. If you have the spatial sense of these dynasties, if you take India, and these were all southern kingdoms, Rashtrakutas were on the western side, Hoysalas were on the western side, you take Kakatiyas were on the eastern side, and you have Cholas on the eastern side. So just with this sense, this spatial sense, you should know that this cannot be correct and this cannot be correct. So we are left with Prataparudra of Kakatiyas and Rajendra I of Cholas. Out of this, if there is a maritime state, a powerful maritime state, and someone should have defeated this, should be the Cholas or the Kakatiyas. Through common sense, we understand that Cholas had a strong navy. Okay, Cholas had a strong navy. With that navy, they conquered Ceylon, they conquered Andaman and Nicobar, and obviously they waged the war with Indonesia. This is a basic common sense we have. With that, we know that what they are speaking about is Rajendra I of Chola. So the answer here is C. Why they were doing this? They had the strong navy because they wanted to retain their trade interest, and their main trade interest was mainly China. And if Cholas had to go to China, they had to pass through Indonesia and they had to pass through Ceylon. Because these people should not create any problem, they conquered Ceylon and they were in constant war with Indonesia. That is the reason why Cholas had a very, very strong navy and they were able to conquer these regions. So I hope you understood the philosophy behind it, and the answer here is Rajendra I of Cholas. Okay, now let us look at this question. With reference to ancient India, 600 to 322 BC, consider the following pairs. Territorial region, Asmaka, river flowing in that region, Godavari. Kamboja, Vipas. Avanti, Mahanadi. Kosala, Sarayu. How many of the above pairs given are correctly matched? Only one, only two, only three, all the four. Okay. Now, at the outset, this question may seem to be difficult, but whenever you read about any sites in ancient India, you should know about the spatial location of those sites. And when I say spatial location, you should know it roughly. You don't need to know exactly where it is. If you just know roughly where these spatials, for example, these are all Mahajanapadas. When you are learning Mahajanapadas, know where these Mahajanapadas are located. When you are learning, let us say, Indus Valley sites, not only the four main Indus Valley sites that we keep learning like Harappan, Mohenjo-daro, Rakhi Gadi, not like them. There are more than 15 to 20 unconventional, unheard of sites. So those things when you read, you just have to draw that in the India map and keep. When you talk about megalithic sites, when you talk about chalcolithic sites, neolithic sites, draw the India map and just mark all the sites and keep, so that you have some rough spatial sense of those sites. For example, look at this. If I can draw the India map, if I can draw the India map and if I can then just write this, okay. For example, Kosala is somewhere in the Gangetic plain. This is Kosala. Then you have Avanti. Avanti is in Madhya Pradesh western part. Then you have Kamboja. Kamboja is in northwest India. Okay. The next is Avanti, Asmaka. Asmaka is in Maharashtra. Asmaka is in Maharashtra. Okay. So this is Kamboja. This is Kosala. This is Avanti. This is Asmaka. Okay. Now come to the rivers. Look at this. Asmaka is in Maharashtra, you know. Godavari flows somewhere there. So there are very high probability that Godavari will flow over Asmaka. Though you don't know, with the principle of probability, you can say that Godavari and Asmaka both are in Maharashtra. So there are very high chances that they flow on, the Godavari flows over Asmaka. So this can be correct. Next, if you take Kamboja, Kamboja is in northwest India, whereas Vipas means Bias. Remember Ravi and Bias? So Bias is somewhere here. Here is Kamboja, here is Bias. Both are very, very, they are poles apart. So these two cannot be correct. So Kamboja is wrong. Avanti. See, Avanti is, they are telling it is Mahanadi. Avanti is here. Avanti is to the western part of Madhya Pradesh. Mahanadi flows to the east. Okay. Again, see, there is less disconnect. So even this has to be wrong. Kosala. Kosala is in Gangetic plains. Sarayu, which is a tributary of Gaggara, is also in Gangetic plains. Look at this. Kosala is in Gangetic plains. Sarayu is also in Gangetic plains. So there are very high probability that Sarayu can flow in Kosala. So this can be correct. Okay. So this is what is probability. Where there are a higher probability, where the matching is very, very close, that there is high probability that it can flow, you can say that it is correct. Okay. So here the answer is only 2 because we have applied the principle of probability. Okay. Now the takeaway from this is, whenever you read an ancient site, understand their spatial location properly. If you understand the spatial location, you will more or less get the answer. That is the takeaway from this question. Okay. I hope you understood this. So the answer for this question with respect to ancient India and these territorial regions, the rivers flowing, the answer is only 2. That is Asmaka is correct and Kosala is correct. Okay. Alright guys. Next, Avanti, the river that flows is Narmada. Kamboja, the river that flows is Kabul. Okay. Now, you don't have to know all the rivers, but you should know all the places and where they are located. That is very, very important. And one more thing is, you should always know, let us say that if there is any particular place, you should always know the ancient name of the capitals of different dynasties. Okay, the ancient names are very, very important. That is again very, very important aspect that you should learn from ancient India. Okay, so this completes this question. Alright guys, let us go to the next question, and I consider such questions are very difficult questions. You either know or don't know, because such questions lack any type of clues so that you can deduce the answer. Look at this, let me read out the question. The first Gandharva Mahavidyalaya, a music training school, was set up in 1901 by Vishnu Digambar Pulaskar in Delhi, Gwalior, Ujjain, Lahore. Now all the four places are important from music angle, so you cannot take a guess there. You either have to know or not know. So the answer here is Lahore. Okay. Know a little bit about this Gandharva Mahavidyalaya. This Gandharva Mahavidyalaya is a school that revived Hindustani music. Now understand, Vishnu Digambar Pulaskar, he was the person who revived the Hindustani music in modern India. And why is he famous is because he is the first person who transitioned Hindustani music from Guru Shishya Parampara to institutional training. Until then, there was no institution that was allowing training of Hindustani musicians. It was Vishnu Digambar Pulaskar who started this institutional training of Hindustani music. This is important because the moment institutional training starts, Hindustani music is now open for common man. Otherwise, if there was Guru Shishya Parampara, then this Guru Shishya Parampara always happened mainly between royal courts and hereditary musicians. So if a common man wanted to learn, this guru would not adopt that person as a shishya. So this was actually creating a barrier for the common man to learn the Hindustani music, and it was Vishnu Digambar Pulaskar who started that institutional training that opened the access to Hindustani music to all common man, and hence it becomes very, very important. Now see, this Gandharva has nothing to do with Gandhara. Gandharva means fictional musicians, fictional celestial musicians. These are what is the meaning of Gandharva. Okay, it has nothing to do with Gandhara. Okay, so Gandharva Mahavidyalaya, opened by Vishnu Digambar Pulaskar, was in Lahore. The answer is D. Again, difficult question because you either know or not know, but it is okay. Such difficult questions will be there. We don't expect you to know the answer for this. Your passing of prelims is not done by such questions at all. Okay. Alright guys, now let us look at this question. Very, very interesting question. Again, it teaches you what to learn in ancient India. First, let me read out the question. Ashokan inscriptions suggest that Pradeshika, Rajuka and Yukta were important officers at, you have village level administration, district level administration, provincial level administration, level of the central administration. Okay. See, why are they asking this question is, Mauryans, if you take Mauryans, apart from their cultural significance, that is the climax of heterodoxy school, apart from that, one important aspect of Mauryans is they are very strong administration. Okay. We should know that Mauryans had a very elaborate bureaucracy. They had a very elaborate bureaucracy, and their system was not a decentralized system. They had a very centralized administrative system. Okay. So when you have centralized administrative system, there are no subunits. Many subunits are not there. Broadly, you have an empire. Within this empire, you have provinces, and in these provinces you have districts, and in these districts you have villages. So overall, this is how the entire empire functioned. So you have one empire. Within that empire you have provinces. Now these provinces are taken care by royal princes who will report it back to the empire itself. They are not sovereign, they will report it back to the empire. So at the end of the day, empire or emperor is the sovereign, and under that there are provinces, under that there are districts, and then you have villages. So if you take Mauryans, because they had Akhanda Bharat, they controlled the entire Bharat, that is the entire South Asia. This entire empire was divided like this. Okay, this entire empire was divided like this, or I'll write it like this. So if this is the empire, so you have Magadha. Magadha was their capital. So this empire had different provinces in different directions. Now, if you take south, this was called Dakshinapatha. The capital was Suvarnagiri. If you take east, it is called Pratyapatha. It is called Prachapata. The capital is Toshila or Kalinga. Okay, this is the eastern province. So you have Prachapata, you have Dakshinapata. Then north, you have Uttarapata. This Uttarapata, the capital was Takshashila. Okay, this is in the north. To the west, you had Avantipata. Avantipata. And the capital of Avantipata was Ujjain. Look at this. So overall, these were the different provinces that were handled by the royal princes, but they reported back to the emperor. Okay. Overall, it was the emperor who held the control of the entire South Asia by a very elaborative bureaucracy. So in that elaborative bureaucracy at the district level, so these provinces had districts these provinces had districts. So at the district level, you have Pradeshika, you have Rajuka, and then you have Yukta. So Pradeshika is like a district magistrate or a district collector. What district magistrate or district collector you have today, they act like that. So basically these Pradeshikas are also can be called as governors. They look after the entire district. They have to go around the district every 5 years. They have to make a round of the entire district every 5 years. So those were some of the rules of Pradeshikas. Rajukas were mainly in charge of land, revenue, assessment and collection. They were mainly in charge of land, revenue, assessment and collection. And Yuktas were in charge of land records. They had to maintain the land records. Okay. So these Pradeshikas, Rajukas and Yuktas, whatever they have written here, they basically come at district level. So the answer here is, Ashokan inscription suggests that the Pradeshikas, Rajukas and Yuktas were important officials at, the answer is district level administration. The answer here is B. So one takeaway in ancient India is, whenever you take any particular dynasty, not only will you read important kings, but also for the dynasty you will read important contributions and significance. Okay, so the important contributions of significance of Mauryans obviously was the administration. Just like Gupta's important significance was literature, especially Sanskrit literature, in the same manner, important contribution of Mauryans were elaborate bureaucracy. Okay, so overall, this is about this question. Alright guys, now let us look at the next question, and this question is from modern India, and again this can be deduced with the help of common sense and basic reading of modern India. You don't have to read any special books, or you don't have to develop any depth in your understanding also. Just normal reading of non-cooperation movement, you should know the answer. Look at this. Consider the following statements with respect to non-cooperation movement. The Congress declared the attainment of Swaraj by all legitimate and peaceful means be its objective. Next, it was to be implemented in stages with civil disobedience and non-payment of taxes for the next stage only if Swaraj did not come within a year and the government resorted to repression. Which of the above statements given above are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2 and neither 1 nor 2. Now, if you have read the non-cooperation movement, you should understand that the Gandhiji was elected or selected. Gandhiji was selected as the leader of the movement, and Gandhiji had told that initially we have to follow the principle of all legitimate and peaceful means to attain the objective of Swaraj. Because civil disobedience as some type of censure against the government, and that will be resulting in repression by the government and reactionary policies by the government. Gandhiji told that first we will always do this, and if Swaraj is not attained in a year, then we can go into civil disobedience movement, which involves some type of censure. Okay. Now this entire thing is basics, and automatically the answer here is both 1 and 2. The answer is pretty straightforward. There is nothing to explain here. This is what was the entire schema or the entire planning of the non-cooperation movement by Gandhiji. Okay, so the answer for this is C, both 1 and 2, both the statements are correct. Alright guys, let us look at this question. Now I would consider this question as difficult. Now look at this. One, at the outset when you read the question, you will understand that this question comes from mapping. But you should understand that in mapping questions, there will always be easy questions or moderate questions, and there will be very difficult questions. Okay, and your job is to always get that easy and moderate questions correct. Your job is not to worry about this difficult question, and I would suggest that this is a difficult question. Why? Because look at this. Why is it that they are asking this question on NATO? Okay, first let me read out the question entirely. Consider the following countries: Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, Serbia, Sweden, North Macedonia. How many of the above are the members of NATO? only 3, only 4, only 5, all the 6. First, they have removed all the elimination technique. Okay, there is no scope for elimination technique. That is what makes it difficult. Second, the countries that they are asking are very, very close to one another, and they are Eastern European countries. Western European countries you should have read, except the Sweden. Sweden was the most recent member. It was the most recent member. In 2024, it went on to become a member, and that's why they are asking about NATO. But overall, look at this. All these countries, these are Eastern European countries, and these are countries that usually we don't hear about. That is why this entire thing becomes a little difficult. But overall, as I know the answer, I am going to tell the answer, but don't worry about preparing for such questions. Yes, mapping is important. We will discuss which are the important questions where you should have answered, but these are not the questions where you can answer. So overall, look at this. Austria is not a member of NATO. Then you have Serbia is not a member of NATO. Okay. So out of this 6, 2 are not members of NATO. Okay, Sweden was the most recent member. That is why this NATO is in news. Even this year, NATO has been in news. Anyways, so overall, the answer here is only 4. The answer is only 4. Alright guys, let us look at this question. Understand that this question is also under mapping, but this question is considered easy. Why is it easy? Is because if you have a proper spatial sense of the countries, you should be able to answer. And that spatial sense of all the countries will come. How good are you in the static part of world mapping? If you are good in the static part of the world mapping, then automatically you will have a very good spatial sense. Let us see the question first. Consider the following countries. We have Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, Venezuela. They have given 6 countries. Andes mountain pass through how many of the above countries? Andes mountain pass through how many of the above countries? You don't even have to read this. Just by knowing that spatial sense, you can understand. Look at this. If you take the continent of South America, let us map out every country. Bolivia. Bolivia is somewhere here. Colombia is somewhere here. Brazil is somewhere here. Then you have Ecuador is somewhere here. Then you have Paraguay. You have somewhere here. Then you have Venezuela is somewhere here. Okay. And we know that Andes mountain is to the west of South America. It is not to the east. So look at this. This is how the Andes mountain goes. Okay. This is the Andes mountain. So if you look at Andes mountain, again apply the principle of probability. Because these nations are to the west, there is high probability that the Andes mountain can pass through these countries. Because Brazil and Paraguay is to the east, they will not have anything to do with Andes mountain. So if you apply the principle of probability, you know that Bolivia, it can pass through, Brazil, it cannot pass through, Colombia, it can pass through, Ecuador, it can pass through, Paraguay, it will not, Venezuela, it will. So with that, you know that the answer is only 4. So understand that the principle of probability will always help you to get the right answer, but in this particular question, you should have a very good spatial sense of all the countries. Okay, that is why in mapping, there will always be easy and moderate questions which you have to get right, and this is, if not easy, a moderate question that you should get right. Alright, so this is about this question. Alright guys, now let us look at another mapping question. This question I consider it as difficult because these are wetlands that you wouldn't have heard of. Let us say they had asked which of the following countries passes through Tropic of Cancer or Tropic of Capricorn or Equator, then that becomes easy question. But here look at this. Consider the following water bodies: Lake Tanganyika, Lake Tonle Sap, Patos Lagoon. Through how many of them does the equator pass? You have only 1, only 2, all the 3, none. Again, they are removing the scope of elimination that makes the question difficult. And the next is the 3 are very unconventional wetlands that you wouldn't have come across even in your static mapping. Though Lake Tanganyika is something that is popular, and Tanganyika, you know that this is, let us say, in the southern hemisphere. This is in the southern hemisphere, and this comes, this is shared by, this wetland is shared by Democratic Republic of Congo. Then you have Burundi. Then you have Tanzania, and then you have Zambia. These are the 4 countries that share this particular Lake Tanganyika. This, you know that this will not come. You don't have any scope to eliminate here. So this question is given in order to put you off. You should not try to get nervous by looking at this question. You should understand that this question is there for you not to answer. Yes, there may be few people who may know and answer, but we consider them as difficult question. We don't consider them as easy or conventional questions. It is okay if you leave. That's what I told in mapping. You should always focus on easy and moderate questions and not difficult questions. So I consider this as difficult question. Okay, but the answer here, look at this, the answer here is none. None is even more difficult. Okay, to come to that conclusion of none, that itself it will take a lot of clarity. Look at this. This is in the southern hemisphere. This Lake Tonle Sap is in Cambodia. This is somewhere 13 degrees northern hemisphere. This Petos Lagoon is again in the southern hemisphere. It is in the southern hemisphere and it is in Brazil. Okay, it is in Brazil. If I am not wrong, it is somewhere in 30 degrees south. Okay, if I am not wrong, just check it out once. This is in southern Brazil. Okay, this is in southern Brazil. Overall, what I would say is Petos Lagoon and Tonle Sap are two lakes that usually we don't come across in our conventional mapping, and hence I find that is difficult. But the answer here is none. None of the lakes are the lakes through which the equator passes. Okay, none of the lakes are the lakes through which the equator passes. So the answer for this is D, none. All right, let us move to the next question. All right, guys, let us look at this question. First, let me read out the question. Look at this. Consider the following statements about turmeric. During the year 2022-2023, India is the largest producer and exporter of turmeric in the world. More than 30 varieties of turmeric are grown in India. Maharashtra, Telangana, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu are major turmeric producing states in India. Okay. Now, which of the statements given above are correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3 only. Now, look at these three statements. There is no extreme statements here. There is no extreme statements. Okay. Now, if they had given 300, then this particular thing becomes extreme. But because they have just given 30, there can be chances that there can be 30 varieties. Okay. That is why there is nothing that shows that it is too extreme. Okay. India is the largest producer and exporter of turmeric in the world. It can be. Okay. Now, that is why we can consider this as difficult question, because it takes some type of courage to mark all the above. But the answer is all the above. If you know the answer, you can mark this. Otherwise, please don't take a chance, because there is no clues here, which is telling you that you can get the answer. But what is the takeaway from this question is, why are they asking about turmeric only? If they are asking about turmeric today, tomorrow can they ask about garlic? So that is the next question. Can they ask about any crop in India? It is not so. They are asking about turmeric because in 2024, turmeric, that is Lakadong turmeric. This Lakadong turmeric was given the GI. This Lakadong turmeric was given the GI status in Meghalaya. Okay, it is given the GI status in Meghalaya. Okay, that is, this type of turmeric is mainly grown in Meghalaya. That is one. In 2025, they will set up something called National Turmeric Board. They will set up something called National Turmeric Board. This National Turmeric Board was set up in Nizamabad. It was set up in Nizamabad, Telangana. Because it was set up in Nizamabad, Telangana, this National Turmeric Board, turmeric is constantly in news. If you see the last 2 years, turmeric is in news. So, whenever you are reading your newspaper and if you are seeing that concurrently this something is coming up, popping up again and again and again, it is your duty to know something about that. Because turmeric was in news, it is necessary that you should have gone and done some type of reverse engineering on turmeric, and on that basis you could have answered. However, if you have not studied about it, you cannot answer with your common sense or presence of mind, because these statements require you to have some type of knowledge. You cannot do it only with subject wisdom. Okay. However, the answer here is all the three statements are correct. Okay. So this is the answer to this question. Alright guys, now let us look at this question. Again, this requires just geographical basics, conceptual clarity. Okay. Let me read out the question first. Which of the following are evidences of the phenomena of continental drift? So if you have studied continental drift of Alfred Wegener, you can easily answer this question. This is considered easy question, basic question. You should get it right. Let me read out the statements first. The belt of ancient rocks from the Brazilian coast matches with those from the Western Africa. Okay, the belt of ancient rocks from Brazilian coast matches with those of Western Africa. Next, the gold deposits of Ghana are derived from the Brazilian plateau when the two continents lay side by side. That is, the gold deposits of Ghana as its gold bearing rocks in Brazil. That is what they are trying to tell. Third statement, the Gondwana system of sediments from the India is known to have its counterparts in the 6 different land masses of the southern hemisphere. Okay, 6 or 5 or 4 we will find out. But overall, these are the 3 statements directly taken from NCERT and given it to you, and select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 1, 2 and 3, 2 and 3 only. Now see, one more thing here is, people who are very overconfident, people who think that I know continental drift and I know all the three are correct, they will usually have all the three statements are correct. All the three statements are correct will always be in the D option. So you will just blindly mark D and mark in your OMR, you will bubble D. But look at this. All the above option is in C and not D. And this is also done purposely. So please make sure that you have a proper eye on this. They are doing it purposely because they want you to be attentive throughout the question. Just by reading this, you came to the conclusion all the statements are correct. I am confident, mark D and go. You are going wrong. Please be careful because many of my students have gone wrong like that also. Overconfidence is not good in prelims exam. Okay. Now let us assess what this particular statement is trying to tell you. Okay. Let us just go back to this board and let me draw the world map and show you the different geological evidences that Alfred Wegener had given in order to prove the continental drift. Okay. We should know that Alfred Wegener was famous not for his theory but for his evidences. And if you can remember, 2014 mains exam, they had asked about Alfred Wegener's evidences also in the mains exam. So evidences is always very important. Any concept that becomes very important, that part of the concept that's important, you should always read. But anyways, so let us talk about the geological evidences. He has obviously given paleontological evidences, meteorological evidences, as well as the jigsaw fit. That means all the continents can be put together to form a Pangea. So these are the evidences that he has given, but we are focused only on geological evidences. So this is the geological evidences. So you have Madagascar here, you have Antarctica here. Okay. So overall, this is what he tells. The first geological evidences he talks about is Caledonian foldings. He talks about Caledonian foldings. So he says Caledonian foldings are found in the northeastern part of USA and it is broken abruptly here and the second part is found here in the Scandinavia. So what does it mean? These Caledonian foldings were there together and after a while they started drifting and that's why you see that split of the Caledonian foldings. So that is the first evidence. The second evidence is the rocks in eastern part of South America is similar to the rocks in the western part of Africa. Okay. So what is he trying to tell is the rocks in this eastern part of South America has very high similarity with the rocks with the western part of Africa. That means what? Both these were together and when these were together, that is the time when these rocks were formed and that is why it is having very high similarity. The third is gold in Ghana, whereas gold bearing rocks in Brazilian highlands, Okay. What does it mean? It means that you know that the gold is nothing but placer deposits. Okay. So here this is Ghana and in Ghana you can find a lot of gold placer deposits. Okay. Placer deposits. What do you mean by placer deposits? Placer deposits are those minerals that are found in nature in their native state. For example, iron ore. If you take iron, iron is not found naturally in its native state. You always find ore. You have siderite, limonite, hematite. All these are ore. You take that ore, you smelt iron from it. But placer deposits are those minerals that are found in nature in their natural state. So how do that placer deposits come to that picture? That placer deposits will be logged in the rocks. So when the rocks break, the rocks will break and release those minerals. Those minerals will come and get deposited. Those deposits are what are called as placer deposits. So when these placer deposits are found in Ghana, that means there should be some rocks that has that gold that has broken and released that gold. Now when they searched here, they were not able to find any gold bearing rocks. The rocks that had gold, they are not present here. But if you go to this Brazilian islands here, you have a lot of gold bearing rocks. So from this gold bearing rocks, the rock breaks, releases the gold and that gold goes and deposits. That deposited gold is what is called placer deposits. Now Ghana has placer deposits of gold, but gold bearing rocks are not here. That means what? Sometime in the geological past, this and this were together. When Ghana was here, the placer deposits went and deposited and this drift has taken away that placer deposits. That is what is the third geological evidence. And the fourth geological evidence of Alfred Wegener is Gondwana sediments. Gondwana sediments found in all of the Gondwana part of Pangea. Gondwana part of Pangea. So what is Gondwana part of Pangea? Gondwana part of Pangea is South America, you have Africa, you have India, you have Australia, you have Madagascar and you have Antarctica. Okay. So all these 6 different parts have the same type of sediments. That is what is called as Gondwana sediments. So that is what forms the Gondwana part of Pangaea. So if all the sediments, all these parts have the same sediments, that means all these were together. Okay. So if you look at the last statement, look at this. The Gondwana system of sediments from India is known to have its counterparts in 6 different land masses of the southern hemisphere. Okay. Now let us count the 6. Look at this. We have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, we have 5, and we have 6. So all these together is what is known as Gondwana land of the Pangaea, and obviously they have Gondwana sediments. So with that, if you can go to this again, you understand that all the 3 statements, the belt of ancient rocks from Brazil coast matches with those of Western Africa, you just saw. The gold deposits of Ghana are derived from the Brazilian plateau when the 2 continents lay side by side, you understood. The Gondwana system of sediments from India is known to have its counterparts in 6 different land masses of the southern hemisphere. The land masses of the southern hemisphere are shown to the world map. So with that, you understand that all the 3 statements are correct. So here the answer is C, 1, 2, and 3. Don't mark D in a hurry, thinking that that particular option is there in D. Okay, yes, all the 3 statements are correct, but all the 3 statements are given in this option called C. So be very, very careful of this trap also. So I hope that you understood this particular question. So this is what is the way you have to develop your lines of thought. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this particular session of DECODE Prelims PYQ 2025. Always make sure that you observe, always make sure that you decode, and only then you can dominate. And I hope this session was helpful for you to develop that skills of observation and decoding. And it also gave you some type of belief that you can always get the answer right, even beyond your knowledge, even beyond your books. And that is the essence of this particular program. Now, one last request is, this takes a lot of efforts for us to do. And if you want us to do this on a regular basis, comment how you felt about the program. And most importantly, please share this with as many people as possible, because that is what keeps us going. And that is what helps us work hard to bring such innovative programs for you on a regular basis. I'll start preparing for the part 2 of this video, and I hope that you people will share this part 1 with as many people as possible. See you again. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Bye.